maybe I can start. I mean, one of the things we were really interested in is like, how do you evaluate the social impact of smart city projects? And so I have a question for Roseanne and Maddie and Niels, because Roseanne and Maddie really presented this project that was a very refined co-design process, like really thinking about how the user would be involved up front, about ethics. And then Niels talked not directly about ethics, but about these ethical implications when the user is not involved. And I wondered if you could sort of reflect in the opposite direction. So Niels, what would you have advised the designers to do at the beginning with the users? And Maddie and Roseanne, did you think about how you would have evaluated the impacts of your project with the end users?
Yeah, I think because I don't think we were able to go through the details of the framework, but then like our framework was like a 5-step process where the first one is to kind of get to know who you're designing for, which also becomes kind of the I guess the anchor or like a North Star of future decisions of like the rest of your design process. So that's kind of like the idea when we went through the framework, is like when municipalities figure out what challenge to solve first, who do they kind of have to invite to understand which challenges are relevant? Like how do they prioritize with the many problems that you have in your communities? Like how do you kind of decide all of those things? And it always starts with a conversation with the community and making sure that you invite everyone or like the right people to the table to have like this conversation. And I think that was like a real, every time we talk about public engagement, that's like a real eye-opening moment for us in the team to kind of realize, okay, it has to be centered the community and kind of understanding community, not only human, and to go like aligned with like Martin's research also, and also Neil's research, the non-human, what are the impacts of these solutions? So when you understand who if you understand the problems that you should be solving, who you should be solving for, and you implement solutions, you also have to think of like, how do these solutions like impact, like, I don't know, the future, or impact someone else that you didn't really consider as part of the audience. I think it was very important for us, like when we did the research, to think of it very holistically. Like when you generate these solutions, you think of like the impact, because like now we see, let's say, the effect of social media and like teens and mental health, like, but when they were thinking of the UI of, let's say, Facebook or like, any other apps, they wouldn't be thinking of like how the experience would be impacting like children now, so I guess it's like now it's like we see the effects of how these designs would impact like future generations. And I think it's like kind of, we have to be responsible to kind of think of those when we design things. And I think it's also aligned with how Niels was like kind of seeing, like, co-living and having the technology to responsible decision making, like when we implement solutions. I don't know if that kind of answers.
Yeah, I can also add to what Roseanne was saying really quickly. Something that came up for us a lot in our research was the saying, like, using tech as an enabler. So you need to find what we call the right technology, for the specific challenges and for the specific values that the communities have. And if that tech does not help solve their challenges in a way that reflects their values, then it's not the right technology, and it should be evaluated as that. And one technology might work for one community and it might not for another. And sometimes we even realize that technology is sometimes not even the answer. Sometimes the solution can be found in other ways. So service design, and social services and those sort of things instead of tech. So tech is an enabler and using the right technology. And if that doesn't work, try something else.
Yeah, I'll follow on that, and I very much agree. I don't think that I don't think you solve social problems with technological solutions. Put it that way. And just definitely start with the community. And I think that is one of the issues of these kind of buildings, that they had kind of an idea of what kind of person they would like for to live there and how they should be. And as one of my participants put it, it's like driving a really nice car. It's really nice. It's going for a test drive. It's not really the car that he would necessarily want to have. He doesn't want a sports car. He doesn't need a sports car. But that's what they've had this idea of, yeah, the sort of 25 to 35 young adult with a good career lives in this way, should have these needs, but they never really anchored it with these people. And then they implemented all these technologies that are in there that are trying to sort of steer them into being these people. So they're sort of being fitted afterwards. And I think this is a good example of when it kind of hasn't been done. And many other solutions do actually work quite well and does offer many things, to be super clear that it's not all bad. Many other people do enjoy living there. It's just that they don't have full agency. They're not treated as full adults. But there are conveniences. It's like going home to your parents and your parents are doing your laundry. It's very convenient, but it's not really your life. And it sort of brings kind of a question also, like what kind of, like if you need to be this kind of person to get a good housing, it's like what kind of person should be able to find good housing? Well, everyone. But with these solutions, and when it's really pushes people into these kind of behaviors, it actually becomes a question of like, well, we want people who are active, we want people like this. They actually have that in mind. They have influencers that they actually are utilizing to get kind of the audience, or like to shape people into being the kind of people that they want. And it's going like the absolute opposite approach of what you said of bringing it from the community. What does the community want? What are the services that they need? Yeah.
Thank you. There are controversial thoughts, but maybe Carla, you can shed the light or add something to these ideas, please.
Okay, thanks. Well, first of all, I would like to point out two interesting, let's say, evidence that come out from the presentation. So the first one is the problem of design at scale. So it means that in a smart city, you should consider designing from the individual to the ecosystem. And we got a couple of examples of different scale during the presentation. And of course, one of the things that is important is also to define which factors are relevant at any scale. And we have seen, we have listened about some factors that can be cross-scale, but other that are mainly relevant for only one scale rather than for all the scales. Certainly, the introduction of non-human persona are also very interesting because amplify a little bit the design range. But of course, it's somewhat different to say that we are also considering not biological personas, because of course in that case we have to deal with the conscience problem with a level of awareness of each one, so it's something more complicated. And even we have to also consider the interplay between non-human and human, and the influence that non-human not biological persona can have on the biological one. So apart from that, I have also a couple of observations because well, I went also through the introduction to the special issue, and I have a couple of comments on that. So I would like to comment on the definition of smart cities, because we read in the introduction about 4 different ways of smart cities. Okay, so in the standard description of smart cities, the cities basically are smart because the technologies helps in optimize the consumption of resources. And we can consider resources also the environment. So the third way can be considered within the traditional way of looking at the smart cities. But just not to reinvent also the warm water. In the past, there have been a lot of work that has been done since the beginning on what has been called the human-centered smart cities or people-centered smart cities. And that were also focused on the well-being of the citizen. So the main problem is really to define what the well-being of the citizen is. And in those work, there have been also the definition of the smartness of the cities that can be considered, can be mapped on the well-being of the citizen. And the smartness is a complex construct, a multi-level construct that satisfies more or less all the needs of the citizen. And of course, also on those works, there have been also discussion about how to measure the smartness. Because of course, now everyone is fully aware about the difficulties to realize, to benchmark the cities, to realize any kind of ranking, because most of them have been top-down classification of cities. And always at that time, there were discussion about involving the citizen, not only in the design of the city, but also in the evaluation with participatory approach, so that they can actually evaluate the different level of the smartness, in other words, the well-being of the cities. And of course, this does not mean that you cannot use it altogether, integrate a bottom-up and top-down approach, and also considers the traces that are left by the citizen in their activities, like, for example, the consumption of electric power that has been mentioned before. So these were just some observation in order to, let's say, create a bridge between the works that has been presented during this session and what has been done in the past, because of course we should try to go ahead and build on what has been done in the past in order to achieve, let's say, more ambitious goals in the future. Okay, so thanks.
Thank you, Carla. And just reminding us that being smarter doesn't mean necessarily that we could be happier. And as we have also Finland colleagues here, you know that the happiness of students from Estonia and Finland are negatively correlated with the results of PISA tests. And you know, we are the first. So that's the question I think that remains unanswered, whether it's good to be definitely always smarter, or whether we should follow the smarter approach also together with this happiness, whether happier and smarter, or just smarter, especially in co-living spaces, as Niels was mentioned. Okay, but now it's time to move. Please, Carlo.
How you define what is smart? As I said before, what is smart? What is happiness? What is ethics? I mean, you have to define it in some way and give a construct. Once that you have defined the construct, then we can start to discuss about.
Yeah, there is definitely need to give some example indicators, because otherwise we just talk, but we can't benchmark, and then we never know whether we reach to our destination. Can we become even more smarter or more happier?